when I first started reloading, I had a Lee Classic Cast turret kit. It's like a starter kit. And it includes this Lee case conditioner kit. It's got a deburring and chamfer tool. It's got a primer pocket cleaner. And it's got an actual case mouth cutter. For each caliber you reload, you need to get one of these kits, which has effectively a spacer. This is the 9mm, the 9mm set. So the spacer is very small. Has a case holder, shell holder. And so by combining the caliber specific shell holder and spacer with the sort of general purpose cutters, you can trim cases. The Lee case conditioning kit works reasonably well, but it's a lot of manual effort. So one of my first upgrades to my reloading bench was to buy this L.E. Wilson case trimmer. And the L.E. Wilson case trimmer is quite a bit more advanced than the Lee system. I don't know how much better it works, but it has a design like the Lee system. You have to buy a caliber specific piece. This is the caliber specific case holder, and this is the case holder for 416 and 378 Weatherby. This is a 338, 378 Weatherby case, so it fits the 378 Weatherby case holder. It goes in, you kind of tap it down to make sure it's firm, and then it sits in the shell trimmer, the case trimmer. You fix it in place and you trim it with this little cutter. And the theory is you I don't have this set up for the right length right now, so I'm not going to actually trim it. But when it's in there, you use this cutter, you trim it until the cutter bottoms out. And assuming you've set this up correctly and you've got this screw into the right depth and you've got this case holder lying on the lathe, then this cutter will cut a square, a 90-degree angle on the mouth, and it'll cut consistent lengths as long as you keep it correctly dialed in. Well, the challenge with these 338, 378 Weatherby shell cases is they don't really fit the L.E. Wilson trimmer. If you look closely, this L.E. Wilson trimmer, I've actually got this screw in backwards. I had to do this to get it set right for the Weatherby. I think it's probably like right about there. Yeah, I could even back out a little further maybe. I want to say I've already trimmed this case, so this case is already the right length. But you can see how far I've had to back this out. There's almost no screw here. But the actual end that's designed to touch the case head is hanging out the wrong way. So I've worked around this problem, as you can see, by putting the screw in backwards. What I would actually like to do is figure out a way to put the screw in forward. And I think what I'm going to do is take a washer, insert the washer on the little trimming, the little trimmer, put the trimmer in, and that'll make it bottom out a little bit earlier. The thing is, I'm not really sure how well machined that washer is. So I've thought about, do I need to sand it down? Maybe I can find a higher quality washer. That seems a little silly. Maybe I just need to sand it until I'm sure the washer is the right thickness all the way around. But that would allow me to put this screw back in my case trimmer the right way. And in fact, I'll put it in the right way here just for comparison. Now, one advantage of actually having it set up the right way is this micrometer adjustment comes on the back. And this is actually a pretty clever system. And so once that's set in, then you can use this to dial in micrometer adjustments, right? And so if you're going for a shorter cartridge, let's say you're going for a 9mm Luger cartridge, or you're going for a 223 or a 5.56 cartridge, then you can adjust this down to where it's approximately 0. Use the set screw, and then adjust using this dial. You can adjust fine adjustments on this depth. Now, I'll be honest and say that this is a really cool idea, but I don't really use it that much. What I end up doing, no matter what kind of case I'm trimming, I set it up for the case to be right. I measure with a micrometer, I adjust it to where it should be, and then I just leave it set. I don't know that I've ever successfully used this dial. I think Sinclair has effectively a third-party add-on that's supposedly a better micrometer dial. I don't know if it is. I've never tried it. This comes from L.E. Wilson. It's a really cool concept. There's videos on YouTube of people setting it up and using it, but I haven't found that it really works for me. I found that it's just easier to set this to where I want it to be, use a micrometer on the shells. I basically have the first case ends up being sort of the guinea pig. We get it set up on the first case. Once I'm confident with the first case, we, use this set screw to fix the depth, and then you can do 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 cases, and they'll all come out to the same length. What I like about the L.E. Wilson trimmer is it does make consistent cuts with this, and the case mouth is remarkably square with these case holders. Again, the downside is these case holders are caliber specific. This is for the 378 to 416 Weatherby, and these aren't super expensive, but they're not cheap. They run from $10 to $20 each, depending on the caliber and where you find it. I think with this, with the Weatherby cases, having backed this out as far as it'll go, I still don't have enough. I'm going to back it out all the way. All right, that's backed out as far as it'll go. Just kind of torque that down. If I put the Weatherby case in, the cutter still won't bottom out. There's still some free play in here. I don't know if you can see that. There's still some free play in there. So I can't actually get this piece backed out far enough. You can see, if I loosen this up, if I loosen it all the way up, in real, if I were trying to use this micrometer scale, I would end up having to tighten this in until it comes all the way into the lathe, and that's what these rings here are actually for. So I could tighten the micrometer scale up to these rings, maybe like that, kind of get lined up on a 0 and say, okay, this is now my 0. Set the 0 here, and then adjustments to the cutting depth could be made with a micrometer scale, going in or coming out. But this is bottomed out. That's as far back as it goes, and the cutter won't bottom out against the case mouth. So this is where I thought, okay, well, First, this cutter, there's a bit of a gap there between the handle and the cutter. It's possible that's too much gap. It's possible I could get that tightened in. I really don't know. I haven't tried. But I thought it, with an appropriately sized washer, it should work. And I thought, well, maybe the washer, if the washer is not perfect, it'll introduce some wobble. But honestly, that cutter is held pretty stiffly by this sleeve, so it'd probably work just fine. Use the washer as a spacer, adjust appropriately, and trim it out. It'll probably work. So maybe that's what I'll do on the next bunch. But I wanted to show this L.E. Wilson trimmer. When I first got into reloading, I found this trimmer quite by accident. I was actually going to buy, I think, the Lyman version of this same trimmer. It's a lathe trimmer, but instead of laying the cases in the bed, there's a shell holder. It grabs it by the end. And the selling point of the Wilson is that holding the case in this case holder, it keeps the case from moving. There's no wobble, and so you're guaranteed a square cut on the end. Again, I'm not a machinist. I don't actually know if that's absolutely true, but I will say that when I've taken the time to set this up correctly and trim my cases correctly, they come out shockingly uniform. So yes, I am sold on my L.E. Wilson trimmer, but I want to be careful not to make any wild, crazy claims about it. One thing I don't like about the L.E. Wilson trimmer is to get the case out of the case holder. You have to kind of put it face down or mouth down and kind of push it out. If you watch videos on YouTube, people will actually kind of strike it, wrap it a little bit. But I found with a tech mat, I can just push it on the tech mat. I don't feel quite like I'm banging up the case mouth, but it seems a little odd to me that after going through all the trouble to get a perfectly square cut, we then risk denting or deforming the case mouth by pushing it on something. So again, the tech mat's a real winner here. On these Weatherby cases, I've been a little more careful than I am on most of my cases because these Weatherby cases aren't cheap. They're like $60 or $70 for a 20 count box of unprimed empty cases. So with these cases, I'm being quite fastidious with labeling them. This is box number 1. It has been trimmed. It has been loaded after trimmed, and I trimmed and loaded the first of them on July 5th. You can see when I loaded these on July 5th, I loaded 10. There's 5 with primers and 5 gaps. I've shot 5 of the 10. I put the 5 I shot back in. The rest of these have been deprimed, resized, and trimmed. When I reload these, I'll return them to this holder just like this. I've shot them and returned them immediately. And then when this is full, I'll run them all through my media tumbler to clean them up, resize, deprime, and add the date here. And that way I can track how many times these have been reloaded. Technically, these have all been reloaded twice because I loaded them when they were new without resizing them. I checked them with the micrometer. They looked fine, so I ran with it. And then having shot them all through once, I've deprimed them all, resized them all, trimmed them all, reloaded 10, shot 5 of those 10, and the other 5 are waiting for the next range trip. So we effectively have 5 that have been through, who have been loaded and fired twice. We have 5 that have been loaded twice but only fired once, and then we have the other 10 that have been fired once, resized once, trimmed once. And no, I don't plan to trim them every load. Usually I'll trim like every second load. And I think I trimmed these. I think the case trim length is like, 2.903 inches according to the Lyman manual. So I got these down to like 2.904 maybe. And then I was, I felt like that was close enough. When they came fresh from the factory, they were 2.904 inches long.